Thank you for your interest in the Rural or Remote Area Geospatial Dashboard, sponsored by the Department of Energy's Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, as part of the Energy Improvements in Rural or Remote Areas Program, or ERA program for short. The ERA program sponsored development of this geospatial dashboard to assist DOE staff and the public to understand the characteristics of rural America, both from an energy infrastructure basis and from a socioeconomic basis, including social equity and environmental justice considerations. The dashboard tool is designed to help identify those small communities who would qualify under the rural or remote provision of the bipartisan infrastructure law and displays several sources of information about these communities regarding their energy infrastructure, climate risks, and socioeconomic and equity conditions, such as indicators for being underserved or overburdened communities. It is intended to be used like a specialized version of Google Maps to facilitate browsing a map-based interface and zooming in on communities of interest. This video will walk the user through the use of the dashboard, including several scenarios which may be of interest to those hoping to apply for funding under this provision of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Please navigate your web browser to the address shown or click on the tool from the OCED website. Users may pace this tutorial for their experience level by scrolling ahead in the video as desired. What follows will provide an in-depth introduction to how the tool was designed to be used. When you open the tool, you'll be presented with the Introduction tab. There's also a Dashboard tab, an Information tab, and a Bibliography tab, and we'll walk through each one of these tabs individually. Note that the logo is hyperlinked to the website for the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and there is a share tool to allow you to share a link to this tool through various social media networks. We include bookmarks to the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations and to the bipartisan infrastructure law. And some summary of that law is provided here in the introductory text. We also include email links to the program administrators to provide input on OCED's ERA program, or to, as you'll note down here, include any requests for additional data that you feel should be added to the tool. For technical support problems and issues running the actual tool, there's also a separate web link to an email address for tool support. We suggest that perhaps the best experience would be had using the Microsoft Edge browser. However, this tool is compatible with any of the major modern browsers in use today. And we would like to reflect that this is a multi-laboratory effort in the creation of this tool. And we also point out that this tool is a living, breathing organism and can change as new data sources are uncovered and improved, and changes may occur regularly to the tool while it's deployed. Moving on from the Introduction tab, we have the Dashboard tab, which we'll spend most of our time discussing. The Information tab, which provides some guidance to users on how to best use the tool using a question and answer format, which might help you find the most useful data. And a Bibliography tab, which provides hyperlinked source information for all the data used in the tool. Moving back to the dashboard, we see on the left side a navigation panel, and on the right side a dashboard panel, which updates as you scroll to different places on the map. In the middle is the map interface, which is zoomable, similar to how you would use Google Maps or other mapping tools. And so we can zoom in on communities that are highlighted here as those places in the United States with populations of 10,000 or less, both incorporated places, which are the fully blacked in circles, and the hollow circles, which are unincorporated places of 10,000 people or less. On the right side of the map interface, you can see a search tool and a layers tool and a base map tool, and we'll walk through each one of those. For example, if you wanted to search for a specific place in the United States that you were wondering about, you would use this tool. So let's use as an example Burns, Oregon. So immediately the search tool zooms right to Burns, Oregon. As you can see, Burns is interesting in some respects because there are tribal communities around indicated here with the Burns Paiute Indian Colony and the off-reservation trust lands of the Burns Paiute. There are two small communities close together here. The Burns, the city of Burns itself, with a 2020 population of 2,730 people, and the town of Hines, with a 2020 population of 1,645. The layers tool gives you an indication of what layers are available and how to read the legend for the layers that are shown on the map. Going back to our sort of default view of the Burns area in eastern Oregon, we also have the ability to look at alternative base maps. So by default, the tool uses the light gray canvas, but you can select any of these behind the scenes or base map canvases to use. Oftentimes people like to look at the satellite imagery for the area that they are examining, so you can see what things look like on the ground. Here you can see that it functions much like Google Maps does. And the issue I was indicating about having data layers enabled, you can kind of flip between. So if we turn off the social indicators, then that layer goes away and you can see what's underneath on the ground. And you can zoom right down in on a community and look at it like you would on Google Maps. So as you've noticed, as we've zoomed in to look at this area around Burns, the dashboard values on the right-hand side have been changing. And they change as you change zoom levels. They update to what is visible on the screen. So in this case, you can see that there are 3 places of 10,000 people or less, with Burns and Hines and the small little community of New Princeton show up as the 3 areas that are 10,000 people or less. The number of the population or percentage of the population in this view that we have that are living in poverty, which is defined as twice the federal poverty level or below, is 29.5%. When we turn on the infrastructure layer, you'd be able to see that there's 20 megawatts of generation, electrical generation in this view of the screen. And the annual number of outages in this view area tied to the service area of the communities in this view is just under 1 per year. And there are 11 substations in this view, and we'll show you how to look at the individual infrastructure components shortly. Another aspect of this initial screen is the availability of all the data for downloading. This is often an important aspect of a tool like this, is for those entities that would like to perform their own analysis. There's access here to any of the data sets that will be displayed. and they can be loaded in tabular view here. And then there are methods which can be used to download them. Using the Actions tool here on the right-hand side for export all, and you can export to any of these formats for your use in a customized analysis. Moving back to the navigation side, if we get centered back on our community of burns that we were looking at, we can display various different layers. And by layers, these are overlays in the GIS, which can be turned on or off to suit the need of the user. For example, under population, we have the Native American lands enabled, which is indicated by the open eye. The shut eye indicates a layer that's been turned off to view. And so as you can see, we're able to see the tribal areas and the places less than 10,000 people. If we turn on the urbanized layer, you can see that the little urbanized area around Burns and Hines shows up. We also have the electrical infrastructure layers, which by default in the initial view are turned off, but each one of these can be turned on or off to suit the user. If we turn these all on, you can see that layers start to populate. All right, and so as far as power plants go, so first let's look at the legend and see what we see. So by turning on those layers, we've enabled their display in the legend, and you can see all the different types of power plants that are indicated in the tool and visible on the map. And then the size of their circle corresponds to their size in megawatts of capacity. And we also have the balancing authority control areas indicated. And this being a very rural area, you can see that peak load is relatively small in this area, as indicated by this light blue color. And you can see substations indicated by their capacity values as well. So here's a substation. And I should point out also that any of these pieces or individual layers that appear on the map can be clicked on and greater detail can be illustrated. So if I click on this substation here, you can see that several layers load. So this is indicating that there's one of 6 layers being displayed in this data window. So we're in the Idaho Power balancing area, and it gives you some data about the Idaho Power Company Balancing Authority Control Area. As you scroll through these layers, it will indicate the additional layers that you're looking at. So this is also part of the Bonneville Power Administration service area, and so there's some indication of some information about that. All right, and we also are clicked on the Burns substation, and this gives you some detailed information about each substation in the United States. As you can see, this is a 500 kilovolt substation with 4 circuits. And, oops. We also have the electricity transmission lines in this area. So this one that we clicked on here is highlighted and is shown to be a 500 kilovolt electricity transmission line owned by Pacific Corp. And as we move through, there's another one here that comes into the substation that's another 500 kilovolt transmission line. And finally, there's a 138 kilovolt transmission line also indicated. So as you can see, as you click on each individual part of the map, you can get a little data window that gives you some information about that. For example, these tribal areas. If I click here, we have 3 layers that are enabled at this time. So again, we see the balancing authority control area for both Idaho Power and Bonneville Power Administration, and then you get information about the specific tribal area that we are looking at. This happens to be the Burns Paiute tribal colony. And all of the enabled layers show up as part of the legend. Next, we have the, let me turn off a couple of these just to make the display a little cleaner. All right. Next, we have some social indicators. So we'll turn off the infrastructure for the moment. You can see that there are several types of social indicators in use in this tool. And what you need to have caution about when you use these layers is they're not all transparent to each other, okay? And so you need to kind of look at them one at a time. And so we'll turn off everything except the CEQ Justice 40 census tracts. And so you can see that if I pull back a little bit, you can see that now we have highlighted CEQ's Justice 40 census tracts. Here's the Burns area that we were looking at before. But you can see all the tracts are that qualify as Justice 40 census tracts are indicated when this layer is turned on. Another of the social indicators is poverty level in rural area at the service territory level. And so when we enable that layer, you can look at an area around our Burns example and get an idea. When you click on that layer, you get the poverty level in rural area in the Bonneville Power Administration service area around Burns here. And this indicates that for the entire Bonneville service area, 31.65% are living in poverty. And 98% of the area is rural. And this other area outside of Burns is the Harney Electric Co-op area, where 26.4% of the population is in low income, and it's 100% rural. Just another example of a potential social indicator that you might want to use. Another key useful layer to look at is this underserved block groups layer. And I should point out that when we're looking at block group level data in the map, this is a very large data set, which takes a long time to load. And so we've segmented it into these regions to enable it to load faster. So in order to look at this for our area here that we've been focused on here in Burns, Oregon, we need to enable the appropriate region. And since we're in the Northwest, we turn that region on to view. And so when that layer turns on, so here it's off, now on, we click on that and we should be able to get some data about these particular block groups. And so, for example, the population in 2020 was 1,483, and there's numerous metrics or indicators of being underserved that are indicated in the data. And you can, for anyone that you're particularly interested in, you can scroll down through and see. For example, we're looking to see things that might trigger for being underserved, such as compared to the state, those living in poverty, which we term low income in the environmental justice community, are it does flag for low income. It also flags for a disabled population 10 percentage points higher than the state. And 13.6% of the population is people of color. And it also qualifies as being underserved for broadband in terms of the number of people without broadband access is at least 10 percentage points or more higher than the state average for the same number. It also provides you a breakdown of the race and ethnicity in this particular block group. So as you scroll the mouse over the pie chart, it gives you the values of the different racial and ethnic categories. And with the map zoomed in like this, you can take a look at some other layers that we've included. For example, other aspects of infrastructure which might relate to the electrical system include police stations, hospitals, and fire stations, which also can be turned on so that they appear on the map as well. And if we switch our base map back to our light gray canvas, these things will show up a little bit better. And so we have the local sheriff's department here. As you click on that, it will give you a little bit of information about what you're looking at. So the Harney County Sheriff's Department and the jail, the Burns Police Department, the local hospital in Burns, Harney District Hospital, and also a federal Bureau of Land Management fire station. And in Hines, Oregon, we have the Hines Police Department showing. So those might be of use for different purposes. We also have the ability to look at some risk factors. We'll turn off the safety layers here. And currently the tool is showing risks for coastal storm surge from hurricanes, which we'll look at here in some of our use case examples. And we include a layer on wildfire risk to structures and flood potential. So starting first with wildfire risk, in eastern Oregon, this is sagebrush country, and this is a well-known risk factor in this area. You can get an idea of how Burns compares when you zoom out and look at the rest of the areas around eastern Oregon and western Idaho. And as we wait for the map to populate there, you can see that it's in a fairly high risk area based on the data set being used to define that here. If we go back, we now would look at the legend and look at the risk to wildfire risk to structures. And you can get the idea of the percentile of risk as shown on the map here. With this introduction that we provided to some of the functionality of the tool, we now can take advantage of some of the features on the navigation bar on the left side. So we have created some sort of initial canned views, which might be useful to users of the tool for purposes of looking at applying or evaluating applications under the funding opportunity announcement that will be forthcoming. For example, we can take a look at the overlay or the intersection of infrastructure and low income by clicking on this bookmarked view, which takes us to a predefined spot in the country where all of these layers are visible, so you can kind of see what they look like. But we can quickly go back to the area that we were focused on before in Burns, Oregon, and that display will update for the area that we care about. Okay, and so you can see that the Burns and Hines area are showing up here with the various infrastructure pieces, transmission lines, substations. I believe we saw yes. If we click over here on these yellow dots, we find out that this is the Starvation Power Plant, a solar power plant. And there's also the West Hines Solar Power Plant. And this is part of one of the Northwest block groups. And it gives us the racial demography of that block group. Another view that we have, similar to what we just showed with the wildfire view, is available here, where the infrastructure is overlaid on where the climate risks are. So again, that will take us to a predefined spot and turn on the risk, the wildfire risk layer. So again, if we wanted to go back to our spot or any other spot, we would use the search tool. Back to Burns, Oregon. And we see the familiar wildfire risk map overlaid with the infrastructure. We also have a predefined underserved communities layer. And so we can turn that on, and then again, that just simply sort of centralizes the map in an area where we know that all the layers will be visible. But to get back to where we want to see, we can go to Burns, Oregon. And so when we get back to the Burns area, we note that Burns is within one of the Justice 40 census tracts. And so we can click on that tract, and it tells us which aspects of, quote, disadvantage are flagging in the CEQ criteria. And so the Burns-Hines area is flags as a low-income area for the CEQ Justice 40 metrics. The tool also lets us create our own bookmarks. And as I mentioned before, we have established a bookmark to look at hurricane storm surge, recognizing the recent hurricane that hit Florida. And as you can see, we're looking at the Tampa area of Florida. Turn off our search bar here. And we can see that instead of looking at wildfire risk, we're now looking at storm surge risk. And essentially, I believe we're looking at the depth of storm surge that can be expected for a Category 1 hurricane. So the inundation height of the surge is what's indicated in the coloring of the map. And this is done for all of the Gulf and East Coast. With this bookmark feature, we're also able to, as a user, you're able to create your own bookmarks. So for example, if we wanted to go back, let's say we wanted to go back to our Burns, Oregon example. And zoom out. And let's say we wanted to see a specific layer that we wanted to make our our own customized view of. We could pick a different social indicator, such as the social vulnerability index, and turn that on and utilize that. And so now we have a view of the burns area with the tribal areas indicated and the electrical infrastructure indicated, including power plants and substations and transmission lines. And we have a metric of the social vulnerability index, which when we look in the index or in the legend, we could see that the social vulnerability index is fairly high in this area. And so that might be something we would want to highlight about this area in reference to the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so if we like this view or we want to utilize this view, we can create a new bookmark. And give it a title, and we can say something like Burns Social Vulnerability Index example. And then once that's done, it's just like setting a bookmark in the browser. When you return, this bookmark will be here just like my Tampa Storm Surge bookmark was here when I re-entered the tool. Finally, let's explore what it takes to use the printing function. So let's say we've got our nice little example here, but instead we want to create a view where we take off the shading, for example, turn off the social indicators. We just want to see our community and the related infrastructure. And so we can zoom in a little bit here to give an indication of some of that. So we have some small substations shown here. We have some transmission lines. We have a couple of solar power plants down here. And perhaps we would like to turn on our safety layer. So we can see the police stations, hospitals, and fire stations in relation to our infrastructure. So maybe this is a more interesting view here. We can zoom in a little bit to give people some perspective. And we like that. So what we could do is create a new bookmark. And let's call it Burns Print View. It doesn't matter what you call it, something that's useful for you. And so that bookmark will be there when you come back to it. But now let's say we want to print. So the way to, see, I just lost my view there. So now I can hit that and it goes back to what I set because I accidentally scrolled the map. All right, so now we have at the bottom of the data window, we also have a print capability using a set of templates. So there are some options here. You can set it up for any kind of paper size, or if you just want the graphic, a lot of times you might just want the graphic to take and paste into another Word document or something like that. So in this case, we're just going to pick map only. And there are several formats you can choose from. You can pick a JPEG or a PDF of the map or a PNG 32 portable network graphic, which is usually a good format for pasting into documents. It maintains the sharpness of the image without degrading. So we'll use that format. You can set the size of the graphic to whatever you want. But if you want, you need to recognize that if you're going to paste it into a landscape view, you want to have landscape dimensions here. So if you were going to place this into a portrait view, you might want to change these dimensions. This is set up currently to be 1600 by 1200 in a landscape view. And then you're ready. And so you hit print, and you can go to the print result. And you can see that it's working on creating our Burns example. And when it's done, this icon will change to a document icon that indicate that there's a viewable graphic there. So when that graphic appears, it's ready to be looked at, and you can see what the graphic turned out to be. The other piece of information to keep in mind is that as you can print several of these, you can create a nice little library of prints here, and they will stack up and be maintained for you. If you, as you're done, or if the example you created you don't like, you can simply click on the X and it will disappear. Okay, so that concludes our demonstration video of the Rural or Remote Area Geospatial Dashboard. And the DOE ERA program is very much interested in your comments and feedback on the tool. As indicated, you can provide that feedback to this email address. If you have issues using the tool, you can use this email address to get technical support. And we look forward to being able to support this tool going forward, and look forward to any observations you may have. Thank you for your attention, and good luck as you utilize this tool for your own analysis.